Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.
Very good morning, everyone here from Indonesia, and it's good afternoon for our distinguished speaker. He's in Australia now, Sydney University. It's our pleasure and it's a great honor for us, the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Islam Negeri Maulana Malik Ibrahim Malang, to host a great program, International Scholar Engagement. And today, in this occasion, we're going to have to listen to the experiences, to the expertise of Dr. Mark Pose. His expertise is really great, and later he will give a talk related to his experiences, his research interests, and also mainly related to ethnolinguistics with regard to the Tibetan and Himalayan linguistics. And yeah, without further ado, I would like, first of all, to invite you to open the program together by reciting Al-Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, but since the Dean today is on duty, having a meeting with the Rector, and his position will be represented by the Vice Dean for Finance and Administrative Affairs for Miftahul Huda, for Mr. Miftahul Huda, PhD. The screen and time is yours for welcoming our opening speech.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning and good afternoon, especially for Mark. It is a great pleasure for me as the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at Maulana Malik Ibrahim State Islamic University, Malang, to welcome everyone to this very special edition of our International Scholar Engagement Series. Our audience today is quite special because we have students and lecturers from our own Faculty of Humanities, particularly from the English Literature Department, but also from Arabic Language and Literature Department. And we also warmly welcome members of the general public who are joining us from outside our university. And it is wonderful to see such enthusiasm for the field of ethnolinguistics for the audience who are attending this online session. Mark, allow me to give a short introduction of our institution. Our Faculty of Humanities is home to two departments, Arabic Language and Literature and English Literature. But since today's talk is about ethnolinguistics and language in a global context, I must admit that our English literature students and lecturers are in their natural habit, in their natural academic habit here. Maybe the Arabic literature students or lecturers are also warmly welcome, of course, but they may secretly be thinking, where is the Arabic language session? But with the help, with the assistance of AI, they can have some subtitles if they feel difficult to understand it. We are, as a university, strongly committed to becoming more international. In recent years, our student body has grown more diverse, with learners coming from different countries that enrich our academic and cultural atmosphere in the university. We also have been initiating several international programs, outbound mobility, although I must personally confess, mostly to universities in Asia, Mark, because our currency, Indonesian rupiah, sometimes reminds us to stay closer to our home. It's quite expensive to spend some dollars for outbound mobility program, for example, in Australia. But we have also successfully hosted inbound programs, such as the Indonesian in-country program in cooperation with Deakin University, the neighboring university in Australia. And we continue to upgrade our academic facilities with generous support from international funding organizations, such as from Saudi Fund for Development. We are also building stronger foundations in international research collaboration. And of course, this today's very event, our international scholar engagement, is part of that internationalization journey. The idea behind this international engagement program is very simple, but we think it is significant to give our academic community, especially students and lecturers, more opportunities to engage in international academic conversation on topics that are directly related to their fields of the study. By inviting prominent scholars from around the
Mr. Miftah, you are muted, please. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Sorry. So by inviting prominent scholars from around the globe, we hope to widen the perspectives and inspire our students to see themselves as part of worldwide academic community. And today we are honored to have Dr. Mark Pose from the University of Sydney with us. Thank you very much, Mark, for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise. Ethnolinguistics, from the Himalayas to Indonesia is not only an interesting academic subject, but also one with a very real social and cultural significance in our interconnected world. But maybe, as I told you previously, I must warn some of our students may start Googling how to get to Himalayas, right, after your talk. We are also grateful to our alumni, Hamada Asfia, who helped connect us with Mark. It is always heartening to see our alumni bridges to the wider world. And Hamida has proven that networking is not just because of LinkedIn. It also works wonderfully for academia. The theme of today's lecture, that is ethnolinguistics and its significance, is very relevant in today's global context because language is never just words. It also carries history, it carries culture, identity, and the way we see the world. And understanding ethnolinguistics helps us to appreciate the diversity of human experience and to build bridges across cultures. Before I conclude, I must also convey the apologies, special apologies to Mark from our dean who could not be present with us today because of another important meeting with the rector and the vice rector. And one of the vice rectors is Asfia's dad, by the way. So perhaps so the dean has asked me to extend his warmest regards and his thanks to you, Mark, for joining us today. And let me say once again, welcome, Mark. We hope this will not be your last engagement with our faculty. If you find yourself in Indonesia, please do visit us in Malang. We are always open for further collaborations, whether through mobility programs, collaborative research, or other exciting ventures. And who knows, maybe we can even negotiate some kind of subsidiary funding to get our students from Malang to all the way to Sydney. Okay, so finally, I invite everyone to enjoy the lecture, the speech later by Mark. Please listen, ask questions, take notes, but most importantly, let's allow ourselves to be inspired. Right? Thank you very much once again, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for Mr. Huda's for giving the opening and also welcoming speech on behalf of the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities. First of all, I would like to welcome to all the attendees. Now appears on my screen, it's totaling up to 190 attendees and participants of this virtual conference, virtual talk And I would like to kindly remind you to always mute your speaker throughout the talk. And in the end of the session, of course, we will offer a Q&A session or discussion session. And that's going to be the attendees' opportunities to ask Dr. Marcos some questions or ideas to further discuss. Right. First of all, before coming to Dr. Mark's post talk, I would like to read and introduce you to. I would like to read Dr. Mark Post's bio. So Dr. Mark Post is a senior lecturer at the University of Sydney, and currently he is also serving as a co-director of the Center for Cultural Linguistic Diversity. His specialty and expertise, especially in the languages of Greater Mainland of Southeast Asia. He completed his master from Oregon University and obtained his PhD from Lathrop University, Australia. And I'm afraid that I cannot read the whole long list of his published work, but his main research interests lie in Austro-Thai, Trans-Himalayan, Tibeto-Burman, Austro-Asiatic languages, and Asian language isolates with a particular focus on the Eastern Himalaya region. Yeah, without further ado, I would like to invite and give a full screen and floor for Dr. Marcos to give his talk. Time is yours, Mr. Mark.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Can everybody hear me fine? Yeah, okay, good. So let me just try to get my screen shared properly. This always takes me a couple of minutes to remember how to do it properly. So hopefully you can see my slide, yes?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. And just a couple of requests. My first request is that as many as possible, if you can keep your video on, because it makes me feel like I'm talking to people rather than a lot of black screens with white names. But maybe the microphone off because otherwise I hear an echo.
So, yeah. Please, attendees, we would like to kindly invite you to turn on your video so that the talk will feel more lively and interactive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so the other thing I want to quickly mention is that I need to pick up my son from school at 2:45. So we will have fun and have as much discussion as we can. But then at 2:45, I have to rush away. So I get in trouble if I'm late. Okay, so let's just get started. First, let me thank you very much for this invitation. I wish I could be there. I really do. Indonesia is one of my favorite places in the world. We were there in April. This is my family after climbing Gunung Inerie, which I hope if you haven't visited, you will visit someday, because yes, the volcanoes in Java are amazing, but so are the volcanoes in Flores. So I'd like to thank Vice Dean Dr. Mifta for that generous introduction, and everyone at the English Literature Study Program, Dr. Agwin Degaf and Zainur Rafiq. And I'd like to join in thanking Fia Ashbia, one of our students and one of your students who made this all possible. And of course, I'd like to thank all of the many attendees today. I'm very, very amazed to find 208 participants. This is quite possibly the largest audience I've ever had. So thank you very much for this generous welcome. So I won't tell you much about what I do. I'm a descriptive linguist, and what this means is I do everything to do with linguistics. So I do phonology, morphology, syntax, all that sort of thing. But I'm mainly interested in working on the grammars of previously undescribed languages. So most of the languages that I work on are spoken in this part of the world, which I wish it was sort of a proper map, but I didn't have much time to put this together. So a part of India that is sort of right between Tibet and Myanmar and Bhutan. So it's the part of India that nobody knows about. It's an area very much in many ways like Nusa Tenggara in Indonesia, with a lot of ethnolinguistic diversity that much of the world is not very familiar with, unfortunately, because it's very significant. So I'm going to talk about ethnolinguistics and its significance, and I hope I will speak clearly. If I get excited, I might start talking too quickly, but if that's the case, please tell me, Mark, slow down. So ethnolinguistics, what is it? Well, most of us understand more or less what linguistics is. It's the scientific study of human languages. Lots of different ways of approaching linguistics, but that's what it is. Ethnography is the descriptive study of human cultures. And traditionally, these fields really had not much to do with each other. And ethnolinguistics explicitly, deliberately brings them together. And tries to systematically study human languages in relation to aspects of human cultures. So doing both simultaneously at the same time. Well, why would we want to do that? Well, because we find that languages in the world differ very much. This is something you already know, right? In the language I'm speaking now, we put the verb in between the subject and the object. In Bahasa Indonesia, both the subject and the object usually occur before the verb. That's a very obvious difference, but you could list thousands of differences between any two languages, and the world's languages in their entirety differ in enormous ways, as do human societies. So human societies differ in their group size. So we might find groups of a few hundred people, which is sort of the normal way that humans have lived throughout most of human history, to many millions of people like we see today in Java and this part of Australia. Human societies differ greatly in material culture. So nowadays we're familiar with these very industrialized societies, but there are, of course, still societies that primarily make use of natural materials for almost everything that they use. Productive strategies vary greatly. We're used to societies that are based on agriculture, but for most of human history, people were practicing viticulture, hunting, and foraging, and of course, many people still do. Social organization differs widely. We have very large-scale hierarchical societies in which very few people actually know each other. And then we have very small-scale sort of clan-based or family-based societies where almost everybody is directly related to almost everybody else. So these are very different cultural worlds to be living in. Is it possible that human cultural features have something to do with the differences or the distinct features of the languages they speak? And if that is possible, is it possible that human cultural differences play a role in explaining the differences that we observe among human languages? In other words, is there a reason that human languages are different in the ways that they are? And does that have to do with the way that human beings live differently, think differently, communicate differently, organize their societies differently, and experience the world differently. Well, I'm going to suggest that that probably is the case, and I'll give you some examples. So one remarkable finding, very far-reaching finding the past 20 years or so, is that languages spoken by larger, more cosmopolitan societies like yours and mine, our languages tend to be simpler in many ways than languages spoken by smaller, more insular societies. And that finding seems very surprising at first. We're used to hearing that, English has however many, 300,000 words, whatever it is. That's actually not true, but let's just assume that's the case. Chinese has however many words it has, 100,000 words. You just pick a number. Arabic has a similar number of words, but then some smaller languages might have many fewer. So we're used to thinking of these major languages as very significant, and we assume that they're very complicated, maybe difficult to learn. Precisely the reverse is the case. It tends to be the case that languages spoken by a population that might have just a few hundred people in a few small villages, their languages tend to be much more complex than your language and my language. So in what ways? Well, in morphology. So that's the structure of words, for those who might not know. So what we see on the screen here, and you don't have to worry about what all of these things mean. They're just sort of labels for different suffixes and prefixes and things like that. But what we're seeing on the top here is a language called Yupik, which is a language of Alaska, traditionally spoken by very small groups of nomadic peoples, reindeer herders and whalers and fishers, and people living in the Arctic regions, where you can't have very big populations because there's just not that much to eat. So their words are extremely complex. You can have one word that packs inside a single word what it takes an entire sentence to say. In the middle, we have Galo, which is not as complex as Yupik. Galo is a language that I work on in the Eastern Himalayan region. You can see there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of prefixes and suffixes. There's these abbreviations for grammatical terms that it might be very difficult to understand what they do or why they're there. And then you see English at the bottom, and there's just one suffix. And it's pretty easy to say what all of these words mean. Very transparent. Those of you who find English difficult to learn, I sympathize with you, but you would find Yupik much more difficult to learn. Trust me. They differ. Sorry, can everybody please make sure that your microphones are off? Just because I hear an echo. Category inventories. What categories do languages actually have? Smaller languages tend to have more. So here is the pronoun system of Susurunga language, which is actually related to Bahasa Indonesia, but somewhat distantly. So it's an Austronesian language spoken on the other side of Kalimantan, Papua New Guinea, New Ireland. So there's about 3,000 speakers. And we see that, like in Bahasa Indonesia, there's first, second, and third person pronouns and inclusive and exclusive plurals. But we not only have singular and plural, but we also have dual and trial and quadral. So we have this very large inventory of pronouns that this language uses. And this is actually quite common in smaller Austronesian languages, as many of you might know. Compare that to the pronoun system of Cantonese, a language spoken by about 86 million people, and you just get singular, plural, and 1, 2, 3, and that's it. Transparency of form, meaning, correspondences. What I mean is, how easy is it to tell what things actually mean? If we look at Old English, which was spoken by much smaller populations, we find that the nouns had very different forms depending on their function. And it's pretty hard to tell why the possessive form would be formed with a different suffix in the singular than in the plural. The dative form has sort of a suffix in the plural, but it changes the form in the singular. It's a system that just doesn't make sense. It's not easy to learn. But that's because its speakers weren't trying to make it easy to learn. They were actually trying to make it more complicated in some ways. Modern English can't be like that. It's simplified, and it just has regular suffixes that just say what they mean. And in some cases, there's no suffixes at all. In fact, there's very little morphology in modern English. What there is fully transparent. And some smaller languages have what we might call special categories that are simply not found in larger languages. So evidentiality, some of you may have heard of. This is something that was discovered very recently, comparatively recently, in the past sort of 30 or 40 years. And a language with evidentiality will not allow you to simply say, Jose has played football. You have to specify whether you know that because you saw it, you know that because you overheard somebody talking about it, you know that because you saw some evidence, maybe he's sweaty and he has his football gear on or something like that. Or you know this because you could hear him actually playing, you didn't see it. Or number D, we maybe know this or believe this based on some other facts. So we sort of deduce it or something like that. So what's amazing about this is not that it's possible to say these things. It's possible to say these things in any language. But Tariana forces you to say these things because you have to provide your evidence for knowing whatever it is or saying whatever it is that you are saying. Those kinds of grammatical features are not found in languages of many millions of speakers. Why? Why is this the case? It's not just a fun fact. It seems to be the case that societies of intimates, or societies made up of people that know one another and share a lot of common knowledge, tend to have these kinds of categories that reference common knowledge. And they also develop highly complex and culturally specific patterns in their discourse that over time develop into their grammar. So smaller societies also have fewer second language speakers. And in fact, it's very rare in some cases to have any second language speakers. So one thing that I found in my own research is that people are sort of astonished to find me speaking a language like Galo or Adi, which are Himalayan languages, and just almost can't even process it. One of my former students told me that she felt like whenever I opened my mouth, it was as if she was seeing a dog talking. And she didn't mean that in an insulting way. What she meant was that she just found it impossible that somebody with my skin color, my cultural background, could possibly be speaking her language. It made as much sense as if a bird was speaking her language. So people are just not used to having L2 speakers. And when everybody is an expert at a language, you can sort of complexify it as much as you want to. You don't have to simplify your speech for the comprehension of somebody that you don't know well and you don't share a lot of experience with. In larger cosmopolitan societies like most of ours, it's harder for this to happen. It's harder to assume shared knowledge. I'm not sure what the person who's walking their dog outside my window knows. I haven't met that person before. I can't assume much shared knowledge in common. So we don't tend to have linguistic categories that make reference to shared knowledge. We also have lots of L2 speakers. For hundreds of years, English has had more and more and more L2 speakers come in. The same thing has happened to Arabic. The same thing has happened to Chinese. And in the process, these languages have simplified. And although I haven't studied it, it's quite likely that similar case can be made for Malay and Bahasa Indonesia in relation to some of the smaller Austronesian languages. That might be a little controversial. I know that John McWhorter has done some research in that area, and not everybody agrees with him. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so moving to a slightly different aspect of culture language correlations, we find that aspects of people's cultural contextual experience, so their experience living in their society in the world, might actually be directly encoded in their words and their grammars. So I'll give you an example that I call topographical deixis. So what is this? Topographical deixis is the grammatical expression of landscape topography. So when the landscape actually gets encoded in the grammar. So imagine you are in this village. This village is called Dalu. This is a Gala-speaking village in northeastern India. And you wanted to tell me something about wherever that arrow is pointing. Well, in English, you might say that house, right? That seems reasonable. In Galo, you are forced to choose between three different ways of saying that house. You can either say namte, nambe, nam means house, nambe, or nama, right? Now, how do you know which one to use? Well, you have to work out whether that place is upward of you or downward of you or on the same topographical level. And you have to do this every time you refer to anything. If you want to talk about he threw it in a particular direction, you have to decide if it's upward or downward or on the same level. If you want to say that so-and-so lives there, you have to decide if that's upward of you, downward of you. And it's actually even more complex than that because you have to know about where the river is flowing and you have to know about north, south, east, and west. But you have to make these calculations every time you refer to anything in the world. And if you're wondering why a language would do something like that, it's because if you notice here, there's not much flat land. Everything is always either upward of you or downward of you. And it's actually quite rarely at the same level. Now, I did a survey of languages with and without these systems in the Trans-Himalayan family. And I looked at every language I could find. And the blue dots that you are seeing here are languages that are like Galo. Okay, they have this system. And the red dots are languages that are not like Galo. They don't have the system. They're like English. If you notice, it's not a 100% correlation, but the languages, the blue dots are almost all in mountainous areas. The red dots are almost all in plains areas. So what's amazing about this is some of these languages have only been in the plains areas for 50, 60 years, and they've already lost the system. So this is a system that takes a long time to evolve, but can be lost very quickly. I'll give you two more examples and then we'll move on. Sociophoricity, what is this? This is the grammatical expression of group alignment. So human beings have lived in small groups for most of human history, and many still do. So for most of human history, we've been very concerned with whether somebody is in the same group as you. If you're not, you might be an enemy. If you are, you might be marriageable, you may not be. Group alignment has been a very, very important thing. And we can see shadows of this retained in languages like Bahasa Indonesia, in which you have a difference between kita and kami, right? In the first person plural pronouns, right? So this gets called an inclusive-exclusive system. You know it better than I do. It mainly functions to indicate whether we includes the person I'm talking to or doesn't, but it can also express different degrees of politeness and things like that. So this is not what I would call sociophoricity. This is far more common. This is what gets called clusivity. The Milang language looks at first like it has a similar sort of system to the Indonesian system. They have multiple plurals. They have sort of normal plurals and then what I'm calling here a sociophoric plural. So let's see how this works. Well, in this sentence, the speaker says, ngakiche bunyi rangdung. So up there in my village, it's called bunyi. Sorry, bini. No, bunyi, that's right. So this seems like kami. It seems like I'm excluding the person I'm talking about. I hope I'm getting that right. The kami versus kita distinction. It seems like he's saying, well, this is my village or our village, right? You don't live in that village. Okay, so so far so good. I'm not going to read the whole example, but here he's using ngaji, so the different first person plural pronoun. He says, we say it a bit differently the way we name these two snakes. So the person he's talking to, he's including him. You know, you and me are saying it differently. So it seems a bit like kita in that way. But if we look at other examples, and especially that we get this in the third person, which is not how an exclusive system works, it turns out that the sort of normal we form is used in cases where the people being talked about don't constitute a natural group. So in this case, we three packed a meat in our backpack and prepared and left. So these are just three people who happened to be together at that time. So he uses the nga form. But down in the second example, Jaji and Ngaji, he's contrasting two tribes. So he contrasts his tribe with another tribe. And so he has to use these other forms to show that these are natural groups. Okay, and the last example I'm going to give is classificatory word structure and patrilineal descent systems in Galu. So patrilineal descent system just means that, you know, children pass through the father's line, as they do in most cultures, although there are matrilineal systems as well. And this is reflected in how people name their children. So if my name is Boken, and that's a real Galo name, if my name is Boken, then my children will be named Ken something. So Ken Mi, Ken Yom, my Zoom is covering the other one, Ken Pe. And then if I'm Ken Mi, then my children will take the Mi. It'll be, oh, sorry, I'm missing an N there. It should be Ken Min. It got cut off by the slide. Min Ni, Min Pe, or Min Ter. And in this way, it's possible to recount your generation back, recount your family back 50 or 60 generations, because every father's name gets passed on to their child, that father's name gets passed on to their child, and people remember these lineages all the way down, in principle back to the first human being. Well, that's pretty cool. But what's even cooler is that we find the same thing in ordinary nouns. So the noun amo has to do with places, and all kinds of places have that mo form at the beginning. So a plateau is a moba, a jungle is a motum, a clearing is a momen, and you could have a dozen more. And then there are different types of jungle. So there's dryland jungle, dense jungle, and so forth. So words give birth to other words in a classificatory structure in the same way that the kin system gives, sort of perpetuates itself in a classificatory way. So all things in the world are in a sense organized the same way that people conceptualize their society being organized. Pretty amazing. Okay, I hope you agree that it's cool, but does it mean anything? Is it just cool, or is it actually significant? Is it something worth studying, worth researching? Well, I think it is, because findings like this really challenge views that many people still hold about the independence of language and culture. So the dominant view among, I would say, most linguists still today is that human languages and human culture are completely distinct from one another. Human language is essentially a cognitive module in the brain, and it's the same, genetically encoded, it's the same for all human beings. Now, you might think that's absurd. We have differences in our word order and things like that, but those differences are argued to be trivial. Sorry. Those differences are argued to be trivial. So Chomsky has said, in an interesting sense, there's only one language. One of his acolytes has said, there's actually only one language in a biological sense, sometimes called human. English, Hindi, Japanese, Bahasa Indonesia, etc., are instantiations of this language depending on which parameters have been fixed by environmental input. And similar statements like that. Okay. So if that's true, then all of these differences, or if these statements are true, then all of these differences that I've been talking about, they're just not really, they might be cute, but they're not significant of anything. But other people take different views. Beginning with Sapir and continuing to Randy LaPaula today, many people have argued that language actually is part of culture. Language and culture co-evolve, and they're completely inseparable from one another. And the examples that I've cited provide evidence for this. The culture that you grow up in actually shapes the grammar of your language over a long period of time. So Jacques Dubois said, languages code best what speakers do most. And LaPaula has said, our language use is a set of habits that we form. They're simply very hard to change, so they feel hardwired. So if this way of thinking about things is in any way correct, then it's really important that we have good linguistic and ethnographic descriptions of all the world's languages. Why? Because without them, we will simply never know what human languages and human thought are fully capable of, right? If I just sit here in my chair and think about how things are in English, and I just assume that every language in the world is underlyingly just like English, well, then I'm automatically right because I don't find any evidence that will prove me wrong. But if we fail to find that evidence, it's quite possible that we have lost the opportunity to find out that there actually are some ways that human beings can think differently, as I hope I've shown that some of these examples illustrate. And this is also important because of language endangerment, which many of you will, I hope, have heard of and may know something about. Can I ask you, I don't know if people are allowed to type into the chat. If you are, let's have some interactive stuff here now so that people don't fall asleep. How many languages are spoken on Earth today? Are people able to type into the chat and venture a guess? Or if you happen to know, don't Google it because that'll be too easy. Just based on what you think or what you know. Nowadays, all you have to do is ask your phone and it tells you anything. Maybe 7,000. Okay. Well, that was a strikingly accurate guess, if that was a guess. That's almost precisely correct. In the official estimation of, so Zainer gives a more generous, I mean, the truthful answer is we don't know, actually. That's the truthful answer. But these answers are in the right neighborhood. Okay. Indonesia has more than 700. Yeah, exactly. So that's the official figure. Where are they mainly spoken? Well, across the world, but if we just stay in our region, then we find that they're not evenly distributed. Okay. They're not just equally all over the place. So we find, and these dots are sort of the geographical center of individual languages. It's a bit of an old map, but anyway, there's not many languages spoken in Russia, not many languages spoken in Mongolia. There's not many languages spoken in northern China. There's more in the south, very few in Kazakhstan. There's more spoken in India. There's a lot more spoken in Indonesia, but where exactly? And you find that in India, they're mostly spoken where in the mountainous regions in the Himalayas, okay, in the places that are hard to get to. Throughout Southeast Asia, that's the case. They're spoken in the mountainous regions. Okay, and in Indonesia, that's to some extent the case as well. In the eastern regions, in the peripheral islands, you have quite a few languages in Java by comparison with Mongolia, but you have many, many more languages in Kalimantan and Sulawesi and Nusa Tenggara. Right? Okay, well, how many of the world's remaining languages are endangered? Again, interactive moment here. You can give a percent or a number. Let's just stipulate that Dr. Miftah's answer is correct. And out of 7,000, how many are currently at risk of no longer being passed on to future generations? Maybe half of that. Dr. Miftah, are you actually Googling these things? Your answers are very precise and correct. I'm not accusing you of anything, of course. Yes, that's about right, actually. So a fairly comprehensive recent survey by Lyle Campbell at the University of Hawaii and colleagues estimates that about 46%, that's almost half of the world's languages are at risk of not being passed on to future generations within a small number of decades. Aha, I see. Okay, so you already knew the answers. Where are these endangered languages mainly spoken? Well, if we look at this map, it's almost exactly the same as the other map. Most of the world's remaining languages are, in fact, endangered in that sense. The places where you find the highest concentrations of small languages are also the places where you find the most endangered languages. So there's a strong correlation there. So what's happening to them? Well, as I mentioned earlier, for the overwhelming majority of human history, all human beings lived in hunter-forager groups or small self-sufficient villages. Okay, we were all like that for almost all of our history. Until about 12,000 years ago or something like that. It's hard to put an exact date on it because these things, of course, don't happen immediately. They happen over time. But with the rise of settled agriculture, everything started to change enormously in terms of how our societies are organized, the size of the societies, etc. The sheer scale of our population and our world of experience. Right? So we think of this as a process of complexification. We think of the modern world as very complex. I suppose it is. But if we think about individual human beings, the knowledge that's held by an average hunter-forager or another pre-industrial person is often much greater than the knowledge held by the average person in an industrialized society, unless they're highly educated in a particular specialized field. So just an average Palauan fisherman in 1894, when this language was recorded to some extent, knew more than 300 species of fish. How many species of fish can you name? I can name maybe 15, 20 at the most. Where do they live? When do they migrate? How do you catch them? I have no idea. But the average Palauan fisherman knew all of that. In the 20th century, my former PhD supervisor, Bob Dixon, recorded 600 plant names that were known by not just gerbil botanists, but just any ordinary gerbil person knew not only the names, but the characteristics, the uses of. How many can you and I name? Well, we might manage to name 20 or 30 or maybe up to 100 if we are specialists, but very few people have that kind of knowledge. And the Galo people that I've spent much of my post-PhD career living and working with traditionally knew just an incredible amount of things. Living among the Galo just made me feel like a completely useless person because any Galo man was traditionally able to build completely from forest materials using the only tool is a machete. The only tool is a machete. Everything else is important. I mean, no nails, no everything is found in the forest, right? And they can all build houses. And I can't illustrate sufficiently how architecturally complex these houses are. Some of them are enormous, many rooms, lots of ritual spaces. Every aspect of it is named. There's hundreds and hundreds of words, hundreds of techniques that go into that. And that's just one of the things that they knew. They had more than 15 ways of trapping fish and animals, including making huge dams over the river, etc. Every Galo man knew these things. They could take food from more than 100 wild plants. They could weave more than 100 types of basket, backpack, helmet, furniture, weapons, ritual altars like you see here, all completely from forest materials. And like these people here are doing, they could conduct ritual chants in a poetic register. So this is, I don't know the equivalent, and it's like being able to recite the entire Quran. Everybody could do that, from memory instantly. Well, that sort of scale of knowledge took thousands of years to accumulate. And this sort of knowledge remains valuable today to our understanding of human heritage. And there's knowledge in there that is essential to social and ecosystemic diversity, sustainability, and adaptability. These people have been living there for thousands of years and they were successful in that area. So it'd be nice to know what they know. But unfortunately, almost all of this knowledge has been lost to most Scala speakers within a single generation. So I don't want to name any names. This is my classificatory. Can you still hear me okay? I don't hear myself anymore. Yeah, okay, good, thanks. I don't want to make fun of this guy. He's actually my classificatory son, so I'm allowed to do this. But this is Marga Koyu. He's a Galo. He knows absolutely none of those things that I just talked about. He knows much less Galo than I do. And he is building a house that looks like this as we speak, using an architect. So all of that language, all of that knowledge has been lost to his generation. Well, what to do about this? This kind of modernization and cultural change in the nationalized and globalized world, they're probably inevitable, and they'll continue to occur and to impact on traditional communities in Indonesia and all across the world. But if we fail to document and conserve as much of this cultural linguistic heritage as we can before it's lost forever, this would be a huge mistake. So we need to try to document it. And one of the important things to point out here is that you don't have to be either a linguist or an anthropologist or an ethnographer. Language and culture can be documented simultaneously. Some of the best ways to learn the most interesting aspects of language is to document some of the most distinct cultural practices of traditional groups. So when you actually go out hunting and trapping with a hunter-forager group in the forest, you learn things that you cannot possibly learn about their language if you just sit there in a chair and ask them questions based on how do you say dog, how do you say cat, so forth and so on. So that's what we need. So who can do this work? Well, sure, professional linguists and anthropologists from famous universities and their students. But so far, that model has not succeeded. We don't know most of what we should know about most of the languages and cultures in the world. Linguists are working as fast as they can, and global warming is happening much faster than linguists work. Glaciers melt much faster than linguists work. Anthropologists seem to have basically retired. I don't see that they're doing really any work anymore. So that's not succeeding, that model. Even if that was the best model, and I'm not sure that it is, the involvement of members of traditional communities, it's essential first of all, they hold all the knowledge. You're not going to get the knowledge without their participation. But also community members can themselves be trained to actually do much of the work of ethnolinguistic documentation. And really anyone who can gain access to and earn the trust of a traditional community can play an important role. And that means everybody that I'm talking to. Some years ago, we founded the Center for Cultural Linguistic Diversity. I invite you to take a look at our very poorly designed website. We're going to have to improve that, but anyway, hopefully you can find some information there. And this is an organization that we founded to try to do this, to try to train community member researchers to partner with international linguists and sort of direct this kind of documentation work in their own communities. So how do we do it? Every year we have a 1-week training program in India on language and culture documentation. And this is not just sitting in a classroom. We actually go out there and do it, right? Very practical and lots of fun. It also involves building community. You can't have people get excited about doing things if it's not fun. Building a community of people doing this is also one of our aims. We follow this, so people who are trained at Trickle, this workshop that we run, are eligible to apply for 6-month fellowships for community researchers, and they'll be mentored by someone like me or someone who has previously done a fellowship successfully. And they'll do projects in their own communities that they design and they carry out. Of course, we help them with it if anything goes wrong, but it's fundamentally their work. They know what's important to them. They know how to get the right people. They're already in the community, so they already have relationships with these people, and they're able to record things that are valuable and in an ethically appropriate way. So here's an example of one project that was completed by Anu Chebiso, who is a villager. She has very little formal education, and she has managed to document a very important language called Husoaka, which I don't know what to say about it because so little is known about it, actually. And linguists have known that it was there for many decades, if not centuries, and nobody has actually tried to do what she did. Jotase Yobin is a member of the Yobin community. This is a community that is called Lisu in China, but there are Lisu people living in modern-day political India, and they retain knowledge that many of the Lisu in China have essentially been forced to forget because of the way that things happen in China. You may know about that. And so he's documented incredible cultural knowledge of the Lisu people, including things that were simply not known to be part of Lisu culture, Lisu language at all, because of the fact that all the existing documentation was based on work in China. And you're able to click on these links if you get the slides after and see this in more detail. Abraham Modi is a member of the Milang community, whose language we looked at a little bit earlier. And he grew up fluent in Milang. He grew up in a Milang-speaking village. He knows his language inside and out. It's his native language. He knows his culture. He knows his people. But he never knew that in the past, his ancestors did what many people in Indonesia still do, actually, which is to make starch from sago palm. And also from tree fern in a very similar way. I'm not actually sure if people use tree fern in Indonesia, but it's a similar sort of thing to sago. And traditionally, they preferred it to rice. And many people in that area still do. So he had never even heard about this. But it turned out that his parents' generation, everybody knew it, but he had never experienced it. So in a single generation, that knowledge was going to be lost, but he was able to document it. So he, was taken into the jungle where there are tree fern plantations. Each clan had their tree fern plantations. They were all intact. They still had knowledge of all the tools, all the methods, all the words. It was still there. So he traveled for days in the jungle to document and learn about every aspect of this from people who practiced this throughout their youth. And he learned how to do it himself as well. So the result is the first ever attestation of vegiculture in this part of the world, which is of very high significance because previously it was believed that these people were all agricultural. They all are related to Chinese and they all had agriculture for thousands of years. Well, it turns out not to be true. Turns out that culturally, they probably have more in common with people in Indonesia historically than with people in northern China. So that's pretty cool, right? If Abraham didn't do the work that he did, we would never know this. We might never know this. And this might have tremendous consequences for our understanding of Asian history. Okay, well, that's what these people have done. What about you? Indonesia has similarly high levels of ethnolinguistic diversity, as some people have pointed out in the chat and as you've seen in the earlier maps. And these languages and cultures are incredibly significant to human cultural heritage, but they remain underdocumented, many of them. And like everywhere in the world, they're undergoing rapid changes, both linguistically and culturally. So similar types of ethnolinguistic documentation of Indonesia's traditional cultures is urgently needed. And anyone who's listening to me today can do it. I was actually on vacation here, so I feel a little bit ashamed to include these slides. I don't want to pretend that I'm a scholar of Flores languages. I might try to become one in my retirement, but right now I'm not one. But if you travel in these to these villages, you find extremely old edifices, such as graves that are constructed in a particular way and are arranged in the village in particular configurations, and there's layers of meaning that relate to hundreds of years of history of these villages, and people are able to use them to talk about their culture in ways that are very hard to elicit, except from people who have grown up in these communities and have experienced these things. I don't know if I can play this. I don't know if I should play this. It's just sort of for fun. I don't know. Can you hear my audio? So this is my wife Yankee, who's from the Himalayas.
No,
Can you hear the audio?
It's not audible to us.
Sorry?
No, not yet.
The audio is not coming. Okay. Well, it doesn't make sense if you can't hear the audio. It's me trying to speak Leo. They're speaking Leo language, but anyway, it's not that interesting because my Leo is horrible. Leo is not an endangered language it's not let's say it's not a very endangered language. There's about 220,000 speakers. Children are still learning it. So that's great. That's wonderful. But what do we know about Leo? Glottolog is sort of a repository of what is known about the world's languages, and they sort of gather together all the information and describe what it's about. So, okay, there's a grammar of Leo called Struktur Bahasa Leo, 154 pages. There's a Leo German dictionary, amazingly, about 555 pages. Okay, not bad. So there's not no work on Leo. There's some, but if you compare this to another language of 220,000 speakers, Basque, it's only sort of 10%. You have thousands and thousands of pages of analysis and so on, and compare that to major languages. We actually know very little about Leo language and culture, and that might be okay for now, but is everything going to be exactly like this in the Leo speaking area forever? No, because I'm showing you the pictures of the traditional village, but of course, right to the left is the modern village, and everything is just like it is in many major Indian cities and large towns. So cultural change and linguistic change is going on. I'm going to bring this to a conclusion because I want to leave some time for discussion if anybody's interested in talking about any of this. I want to argue that the world's remaining traditional languages and cultures are really profoundly significant, not just to the people themselves, although that's also true, but they're profoundly significant to science. These are aspects of our shared human heritage. We won't understand who we are without understanding who all of us are and how we live and how we think. So ethnolinguistic research like this in traditional communities can help to document and conserve what is really a vast, vast storehouse of knowledge for those communities' own benefit. In case my Galu son someday regrets the fact that he never learned how to build a house and wants to learn, hopefully we can retain that knowledge, but also for humanity's collective benefit. Ultimately, the fact that there's mysterious connections between the way people grew innate food in the Himalayas and in Indonesia, that could mean something very, very significant to our collective past. So we want to know these things. And Indonesia, as I've said, is certainly one of Asia's richest and most significant nations from an ethnolinguistic perspective. So I hope that we can all play a role in not only documenting, but also demonstrating to the world the significance of its ethnolinguistic diversity and conserving it for the benefit of future generations. So that's all I have to say. So thank you very much. And I wish I was there.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Dr. Mark's post. Really energizing and also insightful presentation. Right, this is not my capacity to conclude and overview the content of the talk, but I would like to kindly invite the attendees, maybe if you have one or two questions, maybe you still have time, right, Mark? So maybe we'll open...
About 20 minutes or so, yeah.
Okay, for two attendees to ask the speakers questions. Okay, please just raise your hand and let me know your name and also directly ask your question.
May I?
Okay, Mr. Miftah first. You can go ahead, I think, directly with your question. Later we will set another question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. First, about the idea that cosmopolitan languages tend to be simpler. Right? Bahasa Indonesia is indeed a simplified lingua franca, especially compared to one of the local languages here, like Javanese, with its complex honorific systems. If you have ever known Ngoko and other honorific based on the leveling systems, right? But at the same time, if we look at Global English, while its grammar is relatively straightforward, its lexicon has exploded, right? Particularly in the areas like science, technology, law, which follows the new inventions. Isn't this a kind of an anomaly? Could it be that cosmopolitan languages simplify, but only grammatically, but at the same time expand lexically? Right. That's my first question. The second, this is the last part because you concern a lot on ethnolinguistic research. Now, I want to ask a question about ethnolinguistic research practice in Indonesia. And as you know, based on your experience, you also know that Indonesia is home to more than 600 or 700 local languages, and many of them endangered and spoken in remote areas, from highland Papua, Flores that you visited, to small island communities in Maluku, maybe, right? And conducting field work in that area is challenging, not only because of geographical condition, but also because speakers may be shifting rapidly to Bahasa Indonesia due to more pragmatic benefits, or because of the national policy. Now, what strategies do you think, in terms of the policy making, what strategies do you think are most effective in that context? Should Indonesian government or Indonesian people prioritize large-scale national projects on, let's say, on the nationalization of Bahasa Indonesia, or local community involvement, or maybe international collaboration with parties, with Australian universities, to make sure that these languages are not lost before they are fully researched and fully described?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great questions. Great questions. Thank you. So I'll take your first question first. Yes, you're absolutely right. It is certainly the case that the lexicon of a large language like English or Mandarin Chinese grows and grows and grows as it encompasses more and more of the world of experience. But I would not call that complexification. I would simply call that a quantitative increase in one area of the language. And another point to make here is that any language can do this if it wants to, if its speakers want to, right? As speakers of Bahasa Indonesia, you could borrow every word in the world. You could sit there in your office and you could construct 100,000 words, and you could declare that now, as of today, Bahasa Indonesia has more words than English. Anybody can do that. It's not hard. It takes a lot of time, and people might not agree with you, but that's trivial by comparison to a grammatical system that has taken hundreds of years to evolve, and that its speakers are not even conscious of. Right? It's so entrenched in the structure of their language that they're not even aware that they're doing it. That's sort of deep into the soul of the language. And these words are so close onto the surface that, I could make up a new word right now and add it to the dictionary, right? And just one additional point on that is that let's just pick a random English dictionary off the shelf and say that it may have 80,000 words or 120,000 words. Well, what percentage of those words do you think I know as an English speaker, right? 10% at the most, right? 20% at the most, maybe. I give myself a little credit. But I know 100% of the grammar, just like every other English speaker does, right? So having a large lexicon is a characteristic of a community that has sort of agreed these things are things we can say, and whoever writes a dictionary. But individual human beings, no matter what language they speak, tend to know the same number of words. So human beings tend to know between 7 and 15,000 words, depending on how specialized they are and depending on what constitutes a word in your language, right? But something along those lines. And that's true, no matter what language you speak. So I think that the sort of arms race of who has the most words is not. It's sort of it's almost a game, not really part of what makes a language complex. And on to your second question, which is a very interesting question. So there's several aspects to your question. The main one I want to address is the sort of policy question in relation to national languages and sort of the reason why I want to go here directly is because this is something that's very much on the surface in many countries in the world. Certainly, India is very much like Indonesia in terms of these kinds of experiences that you've described. So I want to make one very strong claim here, which is that the choice that is often presented between a national or a global language and your traditional language is a false choice. And anybody who presents that as a choice either doesn't know or is deliberately distorting the facts. Human beings, it is normal, completely normal for human beings to speak 5 or 6 languages fluently. Okay. If you go to a place like, say, Holland, as Zainur has been to, then almost everybody there will speak Dutch, German, English, French, and maybe 2 other European languages effortlessly. Is that correct, Zainur? Does that match your experience? And people like me who grew up speaking English only find that very intimidating. But that's just because I grew up in a very retrograde country. It's normal for human beings to speak more than 3 languages. And speaking 3 languages is straightforward. So there would be no problem with any Indonesian child maintaining their native language, learning Bahasa Indonesia to a high degree of fluency, and learning English to a high degree of fluency, and picking 2 other languages as well, call them Arabic and maybe Mandarin Chinese. Pretty good choices, right? There's no problem with doing that as long as people have support. Okay, so fundamentally, children need to be encouraged to retain their native language if their native language is something other than the national language. That needs to be something that is a source of pride for people rather than a source of shame. And schools have to support that. So we need teachers that are capable of teaching in mother tongue, and schools and children need to grow up in their communities where they can be speaking to their community members and talking to their parents. I'm not sure how it is in Indonesia, but in India, children are often sent away from their communities to boarding schools, to specifically because they'll learn better English and Hindi. Well, of course, if you are a speaker of a small language and you get sent out of your village to a boarding school, you will not learn your small language. You simply won't. If you stay in your village, as long as you have a good school, you can still learn Hindi and English. Hindi and English can move anywhere they want to. Your small language is only spoken in your village, right? So we need fundamentally to have the social value for small languages as part of our shared heritage. In your case, Indonesia's shared ethnolinguistic heritage, which is one of the world's greatest. So that has to be valued, and that those values have to be reflected in the resources that are allocated to local schools. In the end, everybody will benefit from that. Everybody.
Thank you for your deliberate answer to Mr. Miftah's question, but I've seen in the chat box that Mr. Agwin also posted a questions with regard to, that we and also our students are living in the cosmopolitan. We live far away from, remote areas with high language and cultures, the diversities in language and cultures. But could you please promote some topics that we can do as researchers without going to the remote areas using an ethno-linguistic approach, for example, because
Okay,
yeah, the issue
interesting
could
question.
be the issue could be the cost, because going to the remote area costs us much. Thank you.
Okay, interesting question. So a couple of different ways of answering that question, maybe. One, it's a little bit of a maybe it's in Australian English we say snarky. It's a little bit of a glib answer, but I'll say that the cost is actually not that high if institutions are supporting and valuing that sort of work. So we're able to fund Indian researchers, community researchers, for to do year-long projects for something in the equivalent of hundreds of Australian dollars. So the kind of thing that would buy you dinner in Sydney. Well, that's a slight exaggeration, but of course, if people are expecting comfort and luxury everywhere they go, then there's going to be many places where some very important languages are spoken that are not very luxurious places by modern industrial world standards. But my personal opinion is that it's worth it because the value of the experience, the unique experiences you can get out of that are so much more so much more valuable. The other part of the answer, though, is that in principle, it is possible to do ethnolinguistic research anywhere. So simply recording people having a conversation in any language, going about their daily lives, talking about anything, is a form of ethnolinguistic research, right? The real question is simply, how much do you expect to learn, right? So if you're recording people having conversations in Bahasa Indonesia, that is ethnolinguistic research, absolutely. Going about their daily lives, doing whatever it is that they happen to do. So the question is not whether you can do it or not. The question is more, how much are you going to learn by doing that? Because we actually know quite a bit, or at least you know quite a bit about Bahasa Indonesia already. It might be, sorry, Dr. Mifta brought up the example of Javanese, which is a language about which still a fair bit is known, but not anywhere near as much as is known about Bahasa Indonesia. There's not anywhere near as much documentation. So, so that's something that can be done. Somebody's making a thumbs up sign go across the screen. I didn't know that was possible. That's something that can be done without going very far from where you're all sitting now. There are so many opportunities in a place like Indonesia to study aspects of even fairly major languages that are understudied simply because people don't take the time to value the way that people use them as they go about their daily lives. But that's really where the real action in a language happens. And I promise you, there are things still to be discovered about Javanese, Balinese, many Indonesian languages that are even spoken by millions of people. Many things still to be learned.
Okay, so in short, we still have we are actually exposed to thousands of opportunities to do the ethno-linguistic approach research actually surrounding our areas where we live. So Mr. Agwin, you can do whatever without going to Himalaya or without going to the Tibetan or Himalayan local tribes and to do ethno-linguistic studies.
It's much harder for me to reach these areas than it is for you, I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us such valuable insights and also knowledge regard to your expertise and experiences regarding to your field research and also your major research interests, especially in regard to code very not really well-known languages. So this is very valuable information and knowledge for us. And
Can
I
I ask
believe,
questions?
it seems that, do you still have time, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah,
For
I
my
have
questions.
about five or 6 minutes. Yep.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much for the
Oh, Mr.
opportunity.
Samsudin, please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to ask questions. Well, we have already known that English in this case has already become an international language in which this language has been learned by many students in this world. Indonesia, in my opinion, is one of the countries in which English is also learned from elementary school, junior high school, and senior high school, even in university. And we know that learning English in this case, there might give some challenges and also opportunity for the student. And at the same time, learning the English culture itself might give some challenges and also opportunity for the student. My question is about, what are actually the most challenging things in learning language and also culture of a certain country, especially in learning English, the English language itself? Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. I'm not sure if I can give you a very good answer, because what's challenging about learning any particular language depends very much on the person and the language. So every language has aspects that are difficult for some people, not others. So Chinese, as you may know, Mandarin has tones that some people find incredibly difficult to learn, almost impossible, and other people find them very easy. So any language is like that. There are some things that are easy or difficult from depending on your perspective. So I can't sort of generalize very much about English in that regard. But I'd just say in general terms that the best way to learn anything to do with human beings is to be around them. So be exposed as much as possible to what it's like to be that sort of a person. And now you may not be able to be surrounded by Australians every time you walk outside your house, but you actually do have everything that happens in Australia right here on your phone. There's not much difference between what you see on your phone and what actually is going on here. I met a 6-year-old Norwegian girl when I was much younger, who spoke absolutely flawless, perfect English. And I asked her parents, how is it possible that a 6-year-old girl in Norway learned English to that extent when no other members of her family did? And they said, oh, she's always watching music videos. So she literally learned fluent English just by imitating the way that people were talking in music videos. I have a relative in India who is a native speaker of Adi, that's a Himalayan language. He speaks excellent Japanese. Now, a person from the Himalayas ordinarily will never meet a Japanese person as long as they live, will never have the opportunity to go to Japan, and nobody from Japan will visit their village. He learned everything he knew about Japan, Japanese people, Japanese language, Japanese culture on his phone. Okay, he liked anime, he liked manga, he liked Japanese culture, and you watch video after video after video after video after video after video after video, and he speaks excellent Japanese. I studied Japanese, so I have some understanding of it. So it's not to say that it's easy, but it's to say that that's the way to be as immersed as possible, and ideally to love the culture and the people that you're whose language you're trying to study. It's very hard to spend to give a lot of attention to something that you find not fun, right? So I think that's true for everybody. If you love a culture, then it'll be much easier to learn the language. If you love some aspect of the culture and immerse yourself into it, it'll be much easier to learn the language. That's the closest thing to a magic trick that I can give you.
Thank you very much for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marcos. I think this is, time is always a pressure, giving us pressure, because I know that you have to do the next agenda after this. So we would like, on behalf of the Faculty of Humanities, we would like to thank especially to our great speaker today, Dr. Marcos from the University of Sydney, and also to the great participants who also involved actively in the discussion by posting some questions and also showing their enthusiasm and interest by joining the event with a camera on. We thank you very much for your participation, and once again, thank you, Mark, for your time, and I think this is the end of the session. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.